courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast. This is episode 478. I am Andrew in our forum, Andrew NLSC on Twitter. Joining me as always, my co-host Derek, DP3 in our forum, and DP3G and DP384 on Twitter. Derek, what's on your mind this week?
So we kicked off year 3 of the NLSC Top 10 Plays of the Week, and the first week, obviously, once again, was not a disappointment. Just great highlight submissions. It seemed like the trend this week was the alley-oop. A lot of alley-oop highlights in there. And I just find it funny that it always seems like the NLSC community is in sync with each other. We had 1 week where buzzer beaters was the theme. I think we had 4 or 5 buzzer beaters in that top 10. The next week, no buzzer beaters. But then in that week, we had tip dunks, and tip dunks was the theme. So we had many highlights of the community doing tip dunks in various basketball video games. And then this week, it was, like I stated, the alley-oop. And there were just many alley-oop highlights. I think 6 or 7 of the 10 highlights were alley-oops. I just think it's awesome that it's almost like the community is sharing a mind. Like they're all in sync with each other each week, and we get similar highlights from the community week in and week out.
It is really funny and entertaining when the community syncs up like that, because you don't put out a prompt for, send us your alley-oops this week, or send us some buzzer beaters, or send us these particular two-way play highlights or whatever. It just seems that the community, as you say, has that collective mind and just has those moments on the virtual hardwood. Oh, okay, this is a week for great alley-oops. This is one for poster dunks. This is one for buzzer beaters. And it does work out that way, and it's really entertaining.
I love the number 1 highlight this week submitted by
wasn't that unique?
Video Games.
Wasn't that unique?
Yeah, from NBA Live 19. So the cool thing about that play is it's not something that you can just do in an all-star game. That is a play that you can actually do in regular games. And so basically the play was Kyrie Irving under the leg jump pass alley-oop to LeBron, who throws down a reverse dunk. And I've actually done that pass on that game before when I was using the Jazz. I think I was using the Jazz versus the Nuggets. That video is up on my YouTube. Actually, if you search NBA Live 19D for 3 Utah Jazz. And I did that same pass with Ricky Rubio. And I can't remember who I threw it to. It might have been Rudy Gobert, but he threw it down. And I just think it's great that that play wasn't just a product of him playing like the All-Star game or like a street mode or anything like that. It's a play you can do in any mode, and it looked absolutely awesome.
And the fact that you can't do it every single time down the floor, the fact that it is unique, that it is a rarer play that you can pull off, makes it all the more special. And these are the animations that we love discovering in basketball games. And again, I haven't seen that in Live 19. I think you played a lot more Live 19 than I have, so it's probably why you've come across it and I haven't. But yeah, I was really impressed by that, and that was absolutely the number 1 play of the week. But great plays up and down the board as always.
Yeah, just super impressive. The highlight where it's Relhouse playing NBA Live 19, and he's heading out of bounds, and he throws an alley-oop up over his head, a super high arcing alley-oop, and it's caught one-handed by the receiver, and he throws it down. I've never seen that alley-oop in NBA Live 19, and like you stated, I've played that game a lot. So one of the cool things about the top 10 is seeing plays that you have never seen before, even in games that you have spent a boatload of time on. And the community brings it every week. I know that there's stuff that Teddy Bear the Gamer has done on various games that I was like, oh, wait a minute, I've never seen that animation before, or I didn't even know that play was possible, etc. That's what makes the top 10 so special, and what makes our community so special is not only do they always bring it, but we get to see a lot of things that, maybe we wouldn't have seen if the top 10 wasn't being released every week.
And of course, the scenarios that set up those plays are what make them special as well. I really liked Lookie's between the legs layup, because that looked like he was going for a dunk, but then it turned into that layup, and that was different.
It made it more special than if he had done it under the leg dunk, because how many times have we seen that? We've actually seen that quite a bit.
Yeah.
In fact, I just did it with Vince Carter during our NBA Inside Drive 2003 session. Sometimes the layups look better than any dunk could. And for example, Michael Jordan's layup against the Nets in real life, that might be my favorite play he ever did all time. It's not a dunk, it's not a shot, etc. It's a layup. But from where he took off from, I don't know how he weaved through 3 different defenders and finished it on the opposite side of the rim. That layup is unique and special. So that's why Lookie the Gamer's layup was so impressive to me, because it wasn't just your, routine, under the leg dunk. He put a little sizzle on it.
Oh, for sure. And it's a shame we haven't been able to pull off a layup like that on the virtual hardwood. But although it would be very tough, I imagine, to properly implement that particular animation and have it trigger in an appropriate way. But yeah, fantastic plays all around. And as I've said before, I love the community's response to the top 10, the whole attitude they have towards it, congratulating each other on getting the positions in the top 10, and also on the highlights themselves. Just a great attitude around the top 10.
Yeah, and shout out to VF Baller for getting back into it too. It looks like he's gotten back into hoop gaming again, and he sent me a few highlights from NBA Live 10 sessions that he had, and he was on the number 9 play this week, and it was a block with one of your favorite players, Joakim Noah, and then he runs the length of the court, receives a pass, and throws it down two-handed. That was a great-looking highlight. But yeah, year 3 has begun, and it's going to be just as good or better than the first couple of years. And one of the coolest things about the community when it comes to the top 10 is there's been, well over 100 episodes released now. We've been releasing every single week, and not one person has complained about what place they were in the countdown. And I just think it's awesome because they all have the right mindset going into it. They just love seeing their highlights. They love watching, the community's highlights and everything. And it's just all about a celebration of basketball gaming.
A lot of goodwill in that. Like you say, a celebration of basketball gaming, people just keen to see everyone's cool highlights, and that's what it should be about. That's what it's all about. NBA Live being featured in the countdown is always nice to see. There are a lot of people still playing NBA Live, obviously. NBA Live 19, NBA Live 10 in VF Baller's case. So, and you and I play NBA Live games as well. So there is still interest in the NBA Live brand, or still affection for the NBA Live brand.
We're seeing that a lot on Twitter, actually, where anytime somebody hears anything that could be related to NBA Live possibly coming back, it suddenly gets quote tweeted, retweeted, commented on, and everybody's like, oh, wow, this could be amazing. What if Live comes back? And, this is what they should do if they come back. And I hope they come back strong and everything. Unfortunately, a lot of times people overreact and get too excited without thinking first about the information that is being shared. And I know that it's a good thing, right? That people are getting excited about the brand.
It comes from a good place.
That people are getting excited about NBA Live. It's coming from a good place. But I encourage the community to do a little research related to any of these rumors, because a lot of times what it is somebody just trying to get clicks, somebody trying to get likes, somebody trying to get attention, or they overreacted to something that actually has nothing to do with a positive sign of NBA Live coming back.
Exactly. And yeah, as you say, there are some people who are going for that clickbait content. They're just weaving things out of absolutely nothing, just making things up based on very flimsy information, if you can even call it information, just something they've found. Job listings is a big one. This is something that we've covered on the show before, hirings and future job listings as well. But some of those job listings have been there for years now, and some of them seem to be old listings that were never filled. And yeah, it doesn't seem like they are hiring for NBA Live at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah, there was a recent tweet, and it came from a good place. He got excited about it, where it was job postings for NBA Live community relations specialist or community relationship manager and Madden community manager. And if you remember correctly, those are the exact same postings that were from 3 years ago. when Scott O'Gallagher, et cetera, moved back to start working with EA again. And he got excited because he received a notification that those job postings were from 3 days ago. Well, I did a little bit of research on my end, and it looks like what happened is those archived posts were promoted by this site called Mogul. And it made it look like they were new job postings, but they were just archived postings. And if you actually click on those job postings, like if you go to the link, it will say that the position's already been filled, right? Like they're not new, there's nothing open, etc. So it's easy to fall for something like that, right? Because it has an updated date. But at the end of the day, we got to do a little bit more research on these things because we don't want to get people's hopes up either.
Oh, for sure. But the only NBA Live brand that is active is NBA Live Mobile. I do get notifications for that on my phone because I did log in a while back just to get some screenshots for a future article, so now it's pushing through notifications because I didn't turn them off. But that is all they're doing with NBA Live at the moment, unfortunately. I mean, we would love to see it come back. We would love to see other series come back. We've talked about that in recent shows. Because we do want to see that competition in the space. We do want to see alternatives because we know what it was like when we had all those different titles on the market. Or even just being able to choose between Live and 2K or having them both to complement each other was such a great time for basketball gamers. Maybe not the last generation with NBA Live, but certainly historically speaking. So we do want to see it come back, but unfortunately it is just rumors at the moment or overblown speculation. And obviously, Derek, it is much worse when we have people making that clickbait content saying, is Live coming back or NBA Live is coming back, and it's that clickbait title and just waffling on for 5 or 10 minutes of absolute no information, no concrete information, just speculation. And that's been going on in the community for years. It goes on for 2K as well. Pre-release, there's always some kind of speculation about what's going to be in the next 2K, but it's always presented as a report. And I just have no respect for that content whatsoever.
Yeah, it's really frustrating to see that, and some people do that in order to try to stay like in the spotlight or relevant, or trying to gauge where the community is at with them, right? Like how many people are still following me, how many people are going to comment on this, how many people are going to like it, etc. I mean, there was a video recently that I saw where it was basically a repost of a video that was actually made a few years ago, but it was talked about as current. It was made to look like it was current. It was super clickbait. And I think that that's unfortunate because it's incredibly misleading to the community. But yeah, I'll say again, just if you hear anything about, any rumors, anything that you see related to NBA Live possibly coming back, just dig a little bit further, like dig a little bit deeper. Verify the source and verify the information before trying to spout it on social media.
Exactly, and look, I'm not feeling very optimistic about Live these days, I will freely admit. But again, you look at the interest whenever this happens, whenever there are rumors. You look at the people still playing NBA Live, whether it's an older favorite or one of the more recent games from the 8th generation, and submitting those highlights for the top 10 and those awesome highlights for the top 10. Again, there is that interest there in the brand, so EA Sports is passing up an opportunity, I believe.
Oh, no, 100%. I mean, like I said, people are craving another competitor in this space. There's been a ton of talk over the last few years about 2K fatigue, right? About people kind of wanting something new, something that deviates from the NBA 2K gameplay that they've kind of stuck with, but just given different variations of it, over the years. And I think that it would be a breath of fresh air for a lot of people to get their hands on a new gameplay experience, a new franchise experience, a new online experience. And if a player, whether it be EA Sports NBA Live or another company, I don't know, San Diego Studios, if they tried to get into it. But I think if it was promoted correctly and executed properly from a gameplay presentation and mode perspective, that a new player could make a splash in the first year. I really do believe that. I believe that that's how hungry people are for a new basketball game.
Yeah, as much as some people try to shout down nobody wants it to come back, nobody's interested, we've got 2K, it's an insurmountable behemoth to try and overtake in the basketball gaming space, that's just wrong. I mean, if you're actually in the basketball gaming community and listening to what people say and hear them talking about that nostalgia for NBA Live and the NBA 2K fatigue, as you said, and that desire for alternatives and choices in the space, then people absolutely have that interest. So whether they have the confidence that Live can do it is another matter, and whether Live will do it is another matter, of course, as well. But people definitely want it. We've talked about NBA Live coming back so many times and why we want it and what they have to do and what it would have to be. But, Derek, I saw something in our Discord recently. I think it was Pep that brought it up, watching some footage, brought up the idea of it being more of a sim arcade hybrid or more of an arcade direction. I saw a tweet about that as well, a response to one of your tweets about NBA Live 2003, suggesting that was the direction it should have gone in. What's your take on that?
I disagree with the fact that that is the only way to compete. That's not what he said, but I've seen that in the community, as have you, where people will be discussing NBA Live and they'll be like, they have to go arcade or they have to go street or they have to go mostly arcade in order to make their mark in the basketball gaming scene. I since when is there only room for one sim title in the space? That doesn't make sense. That was never the case prior. I think that sim basketball is still going to reign supreme. I think, again, I've stated it, NBA is the draw. Without the NBA, without the NBA on NBA 2K's name, that game wouldn't sell nearly as much. And what is the NBA? It's simulation basketball. It's real life basketball. You're not seeing Jimmy Butler jump, 10 feet in the air and spin 360 and throw it down or something like that.
That's jam.
You're not seeing 180, 200 point games, right? So like there's definitely room for another sim game in the space that could have a completely different gameplay style than what you see in NBA 2K from a control perspective, for how the players move, how they foot plant, how the post game works, how defense is played, etc. There should be more options for sim basketball games. Now, as far as creating a game that's like a sim arcade hybrid, for example, what did I just post on the NLSC YouTube? Slam and Jam 96 featuring Magic and Kareem. That is what I consider a sim arcade hybrid.
Same.
Because it's sim rules, right? It's 5-on-5 basketball. It's a regular basketball court, players wearing regular jerseys, etc. They're playing in a regular basketball stadium, etc. But at the same time, it's super fast-paced. You are jumping from further out than regular NBA players would on a lot of dunks. You're jumping higher often as well.
Everyone dunks, yeah.
Right, exactly. And then, like I said, the pace is just faster than real life. So, of course, that type of gameplay will always be welcome in the space. And of course, if NBA Live came back and did that right and still use the NBA license, etc., that there would be a market for that and people would play it. I still think that the best route for EA Sports to go if they bring NBA Live back is to be a competitor in the sim space and make a sim basketball game.
Yeah, I'm with you all the way on that one. I brought it up because I have drafted an article, a future Monday tip-off, discussing the sim arcade hybrid, because we have had fun with those games. And again, you posted that footage of Slam and Jam recently since you picked it up, and we've played Konami's In the Zone, which is kind of that sim arcade hybrid, and even N1 Streetball is kind of in that vein, in that it's very grounded in sim, but has those arcade elements and those boosts and everything, which are more of an arcade style of feature. I definitely think there is room in the basketball gaming space for those kinds of games. I've developed more an appreciation for them since starting to build my collection. And yes, if NBA Live came back in that style, I think it could succeed. I think it would definitely be an alternative to 2K. But yeah, I would rather see it strive to be a great sim game, doing its own things, its own approach to gameplay, its own approach to modes. I think that it could really succeed being a traditional style of game, whereas you see 2K going to that live service content and trying to be sometimes Fortnite with basketball thrown in its career modes. Having that focus on the NBA and being a more traditional game, I think NBA Live could win back the crowd, as I've said before.
Right. I also want to point out that NBA 2K has a lot of arcade elements kind of implemented into it now.
Sure.
Especially with the way the players move. At times, the sheer number of contact alley-oops, which are incredibly rare in real life, but they happen all the time.
Takeover.
In NBA 2K. The takeover system, which I hate. It's basically like a power-up that makes your player superhuman on the court. And, you have, how many snatch blocks have you seen in real life compared to what happens in NBA 2K? They are happening a lot in NBA 2K, but they're very rare in real life. So and then obviously just the number of artificial boosts that are in NBA 2K. There's up to 80 badges now, etc. So NBA 2K has moved actually further and further into the arcade direction. And like you said, copying games like Fortnite and whatnot, and trying to appeal to that audience. And then also appeal to basically everybody, people that don't really love basketball either, or sometimes people that don't even really like it. They're treating it like a fighting game, right? But trying to appeal to everybody has definitely made the game lean more into an arcade direction.
It has diluted that sim experience to a large extent. I would absolutely agree. And look, I hate gatekeeping. I hate elitism. And these games should be for everyone, or they should be able to be enjoyed by anyone and everyone. But when you do try and cast that wider net, when you do try and appeal to everybody beyond the hardcore hoop head, then you do have these issues where you're actually creating something that's not about basketball. And again, NBA Live, if that was to come back and really focus on that audience, it could win back a lot of hardcore basketball gamers and fans.
Oh, 100%. And there's a lot of things that 2K is not doing well right now from a gameplay perspective. And like you stated, we've talked about MyCAREER and whatnot, and how sometimes my team is unfair from a mode perspective. So it's not like 2K is invisible, right? It's not like 2K is doing everything right and there isn't somebody that could come along and do anything better. Like, that's definitely not the case here. One thing that a lot of people noticed with NBA Live 19, while it was rough around the edges and sometimes it was a little sluggish on the sticks, a little delay on the animations, but that the animations more often than not were often smoother than 2K, even just like dribbling up the ball or like player movement transitions, etc. And a lot of times when I post NBA Live 19 highlights on Twitter, I get those comments. They talk about how smooth the transitions are for animations and how smooth everything looks. So a competitor, whether it's EA Sports NBA Live, whether it's another company, et cetera, that comes into the space, could absolutely knock it out of the park, even in year one, if they can really make a great sim experience and just make the game look great.
The interest will definitely be there, and that is, once again, very evident from the comments and people still playing those games and sharing those highlights. But once again, these are just rumors at the moment, and like you said, it's important to check the sources, to verify them, and to look a little bit deeper into listings when they come up, and just make sure that it isn't an old listing or old information or just somebody speculating.
Right, exactly. And one thing I want people to do is try to enjoy all aspects of basketball gaming. I know that a lot of people out there, they want to play just like the newest game, or maybe, they don't have a lot of time to play a lot of different games. But do yourself a favor and really try to revisit some of these past titles. Whether it be NBA Live, NBA Shootout, NBA Inside Drive, NBA in the Zone, older NBA 2Ks, all of that. And then obviously the arcade titles, the NBA Jams, the NBA Streets, and one Street Ball. There are so many basketball games and so much content out there that has been released over, the last 30 plus years. If you could really get into some of those older titles and open your mind to that, you could have endless fun.
Oh, I can attest to that. I mean, I'm back into my 2K14 MyCAREER. And of course, that is not an old game as such. It is 10 years old this year, and man, has time ever flown. To that point, an old game doesn't necessarily have to mean from the 90s. You and I have plenty of nostalgia for those games, and there are games from that era that hold up, and we would absolutely advocate for people to check out, to go back and revisit. But if you have nostalgia for a more recent, older title, something within the last 10 years, the last 15 years, go back and play that. I mean, certainly go back and play the classics as well, the older classics. But older games doesn't necessarily have to mean ancient in this context, Eric. Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC Podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, ME-Live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at nba-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community.
That brings us to your NBA 2K14 MyCAREER. So you were sending me highlights again. Always makes me happy. And you're on season 6 now. You've been lobbying for Terry Hansen to get some more minutes since he's been benched for some unknown reason, and Carmelo's been, starting, etc. So what's going on in season 6?
Well, I'm 4 games in. I did take a bit of a break from it. Obviously sunk hours upon hours into that over the past 1.5 to 2 years, I'd have to say. And it is still fun. I did take a bit of a break after year 5. Back into it now, up to game 4, as I said. Terry Hansen is still coming off the bench, which is frustrating. His position is a small forward. Although he was starting at shooting guard as a rookie and into his second season as well, it isn't actually listed as his secondary position. He's just a small forward, according to the game. Jason Richardson moved on, and he took his place as the highest-rated swingman, basically. And as I've said before, kind of had a bit of a rough start for Terry Hansen, but then really came to enjoy him and throwing him lobs and forming kind of a dynamic duo with him. So that's been a lot of fun. But with Michael Carter-Williams, who's not been performing well and was coming off the bench as a point guard rated lower than me, was just putting up very ordinary numbers, very, very pedestrian numbers to say the least. But unfortunately, he has been developing. His overall rating has been increasing, so now he's been moved into the starting lineup, and that's moved me over to shooting guard. And with Carmelo Anthony and his rating, he's obviously starting at small forward. Thaddeus Young is still rated fairly high and starting at power forward, and Nerlens Noel developing into a beast starting at center. So that's moved Hansen to the bench. And I've tried so far. I've tried to get MCW traded. I said I'm having a problem with a teammate. It didn't give me the option to trade him, unfortunately, so that didn't work out. And unfortunately, he's been healthy, as as messed up as that sounds. He missed a lot of time in his, third or fourth year, which helped Hansen stay in the starting lineup. But Carmelo Anthony has gone down with an injury, a sprained knee for a couple of weeks, so Terry Hansen is back in the starting 5. Scored, in a game before that, he played 15 minutes and scored 30 points. Why would you not want this player to be playing 30-plus minutes a game? Johnny Davis, new coach of the 76ers when Brett Brown was ousted. So it's just been very frustrating in that respect. But they have re-signed him for 3 years, Terry Hansen, while Melo only re-signed for 1. I was kind of hoping that Melo would move on because he was frustrated with his role, and I was hoping that he would move on and let Hansen move into the starting lineup. Not the case, but if injuries will do it, Derek, I'm kind of sick that way.
Do you have an issue with NBA 2K14's MyCAREER logic?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the feature that would come in future games where you can influence the lineups, where you can basically say, you suggest, quotation marks, you suggest changes to the lineup when you unlock that ability in future games. The suggestions are basically always taken on board by the AI, in my experience. So you don't have that influence in 2K14. Some of the trade and free agent logic does leave something to be desired. There's a lot of players that have very lengthy tenures, 5 or 6 years into MyCAREER, whereas there'd be more player movement, not just the big names, obviously, jumping teams, but also those, especially those journeymen who would be going to different teams. I think Isaiah Thomas he spent about 5 or 6 years with the Magic and things like that. So I'm seeing a lack of player movement the more I play that is not particularly realistic. Not a lot of shuffling around the benches of... and even with the fringe starters, not seeing enough movement to those for those players. So, yeah, there's definitely some logic issues with 2K14. It isn't standing in the way of fun, but I'm definitely noticing it the more years that I play in the mode.
Yeah, I would say the gameplay and the graphics and everything probably just, they're too much of a positive.
Makes up for it, yeah.
Right, exactly. However, does it also kind of work in a way because it does make you feel like you're a real player on a team and that you don't have the power that maybe you wish you should, and you kind of just have to roll with the punches?
Oh, it definitely brings some authenticity to the NBA MyCAREER experience. And that's what I really miss in the more recent games where they've really gone all out on the stories, and some really terrible stories in some cases. But there is that authenticity in having that lack of control. Even having to play 4 years on a rookie contract. In more recent titles, you're a free agent at the end of your first season. So you really have to play that one season with the first team you get drafted by, the first team you choose coming out of the end of the prelude or whatever beginning of the MyCAREER story is. So you do have that flexibility. And I understand why they do that and let people move around and kind of turn MyCAREER into a speed run because you've got so much other stuff and, of course, the focus on the online scene. But yeah, I do appreciate that authenticity of 2K14 and giving me those 4 years that I had to wait. Although then there is an issue with free agency where I didn't actually get to choose where I wanted to go after those 4 years were up. I didn't actually get the free agency choice. And I think it might be tied into a story element with Jackson Ellis and LeBron James offering to play with you. And if they're not free agents at the same time, it doesn't let you make that choice. I have seen that that choice is in the game. I have seen YouTube videos of it. But I think there's an issue with being able to choose or not being able to choose if they are not free agents with you at the same time. Jackson Ellis looks like he will be opting out of his contract and has expressed interest in playing with me despite being a rival. So we'll see what happens at the end of the year.
That would be an interesting wrinkle.
Yeah.
I'd love to see the highlights of you and Jackson Ellis together. I'm sure that would be in the top 10 quite a few times. 2K15, I know that you've expressed interest in starting a MyCAREER on that, but you didn't spend a lot of time with it back in the day. Is that something that you'll probably hold off on and continue, playing NBA 2K14? Or is that something where you might dive into it sooner rather than later?
I think I'm going to split time between the two, and of course other things that I'd like to play. 6 years in, I am still having a blast with 2K14 MyCAREER, but obviously have got a lot out of it already. Filled the whole Hall of Fame checklist at this point, so anytime I retire... I mean, I after my second season, I was able to... second or third season, I think I was able to fulfill those requirements, but yeah, I've now filled the entire list just as a 100% completion run, if you will. I think I will start splitting some time with other games. 2K15, I do want to cover that for Way Back Wednesday. That is the one MyCAREER that I haven't really talked about of those older games with those initial stories in detail. I haven't done a detailed Way Back Wednesday retrospective on it as yet because I want to do that deep playthrough of it and did neglect it a lot back in the day, as you pointed out. So I think I will get into that and at least split some time with it. It's one that I won't be taking as seriously as 2K14. This is a proper playthrough, whereas the 2K15, I mean, I'll play it properly, but I'm not going to be worried about getting to the Hall of Fame or having those long-term goals as in 2K14. It's going to be more of that seeing what it's all about and finally experiencing it for the first time and or properly for the first time, because I have played a little way into it, the early stages of that story, and writing the article about it.
This is in line, Andrew, with our mailbag question for the community this week, basically our main topic. You wish you had spent more time with NBA 2K14 back in the day, and luckily you've been able to revisit that now and, get your fill with that game, and it's been a blast for you. And the same with NBA 2K15, now that you've warmed up to the 2K series, you wish you had spent a little bit more time with that game back in the day doing that MyCAREER. So I asked the community, is there a game from the past that you wish you had spent more time with? And is there a mode or season you wish you had completed? So I know 2K14, 2K15, you wish you had spent more time with those back in the day. But what other game, Andrew, do you wish that you had spent more time with?
I'd probably have to say, off the top of my head, 2K11 is the one that comes immediately to mind because I did play it when it launched, but I was still warming up to the 2K series, as I've said before. I did go back and play the Jordan Challenge, but being able to play an association or something with that game, especially with the Bulls shooting to the top of the East that year, that would have been a lot of fun to play an association and really get into that and guide them to beyond the Eastern Conference Finals that they made that year. So association is a mode, to sort of get into that second question as well, that I really wish I spent time with because I was a big franchise and Dynasty gamer back in the heyday of NBA Live and have a lot of great memories of that. But association, and of course now My League and My NBA is taken it even further, but association really just took franchise modes to the next level. There was a lot of detail in those modes, even back then, that was just so far ahead of what Live was doing with dynasty and franchise, and they kind of took their foot off the pedal, which is a, a big problem with NBA Live over the years, that they bring in this really cool feature and then don't really follow up on it, don't really build upon it and expand upon it, and conversely, that's been a strength for 2K. So NBA 2K11 and Association Mode, that's what springs to mind for me.
Yeah, I think I said it on a recent podcast that I, too, wish I had spent more time with NBA 2K11 because there's a lot going on in my life when that game was released, and I didn't get to play it as much solo or with my brothers as I would have liked. I would have really liked to dive in early to, the Jordan Challenge and using the classic teams and all of that stuff. So yeah, that's one regret for me. I wish I had spent more time with that game when it was new in the current release. I'll give one of mine. NBA 2K16 and NBA 2K17, my team. So, as you know, NBA 2K15, it was the first PS4/Xbox One port to the PC. And spent a ton of time on my team on that game, on 2K15. I loved it. And then NBA 2K16 came out, and I barely played my team. And then NBA 2K17, which is up there for my favorite NBA 2K of all time, I didn't even touch my team. And I regret that. I think what ended up happening is with NBA 2K16 and 2K17, my brothers and I immediately got into modding it, trying to fill out the classic teams, trying to create new classic teams, and then using those classic teams in a My League setting. And while that was fun and it was a blast to play with them using those teams, I feel like I missed out on two games that were probably really excellent in that My Team mode. It would have been really cool to go after my favorite players. I love the gameplay on both of those games. Would have been great to make highlights. It would have been great to share those experiences on the NLSC. So I do have regrets. And it's actually the same thing with NBA Live 15 and NBA Live 16. We were spending most of our time on 2K15, 2K16, etc. I didn't spend that much time on NBA Live 15 and Live 16 as a result. And I saw your highlights and the other community members' highlights of Ultimate Team on those two games, and it looked like a blast, right? And, I saw your highlights with Derrick Rose on Live 15, your high-flying dunks with Sean Kemp and everything. And I'm watching that, and I'm like, damn, I wish these games were still online, right? I wish I could still play these modes for these games, and I wish I had spent time with those games and those modes back in the day, because I don't hate Live 15 and Live 16's gameplay. I actually can have quite a bit of fun with those two games. So it would have been really cool to play Ultimate Team on Live 15 and Live 16 and My Team on 2K16 and 2K17.
It's funny because I have the opposite situation with Live 15 and 2K15, that I was playing Live 15, giving it a chance after Live 14 let me down, and 2K14 I wasn't into at the time, so I went back to probably Live 06, actually. Live 06 PC was my Bulls Dynasty on Live 06 PC, which I have no regrets about that. That was a lot of fun, and obviously been getting to 2K14 in the years since. But yeah, I was playing Live 15 instead of 2K15. Would have liked to have split a bit more time between them, but Ultimate Team was a blast. And, you're absolutely right, and I can relate to missing my team in games like 2K15, 2K16, and even 2K17. But also 2K19. I played a lot of 2K19 with MyCAREER, playing the 2 full seasons, getting to the Hall of Fame. But yeah, I had a pretty good team in 2K19 because I was entering the locker codes. I was getting to that MT with playing it a little bit and being able to work the auction house. This was before the MT resellers really just completely ruined the auction house. So I was actually able to get some pretty good cards. Had a Galaxy Opal Michael Jordan, and actually quite a few Galaxy Opals because of the way the auction house wasn't ruined yet. So I had a really good team that I wish I'd played more of 2K19. I was kind of just using it as a card collecting mode, not putting any money into it, of course, just no money spent, being able to assemble these cards through the auction house, etc., and locker codes and all that stuff. And but I never really played enough with them. And the problem with these modes, as you pointed out, is that once the servers are offline, you can't go back to them. I mean, if I wanted to go back and start a 2K11 association today, Derek, I could, right? But with my team, with Ultimate Team, they're live service content. They're online content, so online modes, even if you are playing them single player because of the online content. So you can't play them now. So if you missed out or you wished you could go back and continue the journey, you can't.
Similar feeling about NBA 2K19. As you know, it was really the roster mods, the retro season rosters from Stildo and team that really got me back into that game.
For sure.
And then obviously I did some slider tweaks and whatnot. Now I've spent hundreds of hours on that game, and I can really get into NBA 2K19. I do wish I had spent some time on my team for that game. Of course, my slider tweaks wouldn't have been valid for my team because you can adjust them. So that's something that I would have had to deal with. But at the same time, I love the look of NBA 2K19. I think I said when 2K19 came out that it reminded me of NBA 2K12 and NBA 2K11, just kind of the way the player models looked and the lighting and all of that. So I like the look of the game. I like that size ups were still in the game. I like the physicality of the game. They improved the defense from NBA 2K18 because they were able to fix the blow by issue, etc. It still has some NBA 2K16, NBA 2K17 bones when it comes to like the post game and whatnot. So like I do wish that I had spent some time on my team on NBA 2K19. The next game that I wanted to bring up is NBA 2K9. So my brother Nick and I, we got about 54 games into a season where I was using the Nuggets and he was using the Celtics. And we were both busy with life at the time. We were playing 12-minute quarters. We were being each other's opponents every game. And we did. We got 54 games in. That's still a lot of hours with the game. But we immediately switched to NBA 2K10 when 2K10 came out, and we never finished that awesome, amazing season that we were having. I really wish that we had stuck with NBA 2K9, finished that season. He was in the East, I was in the West. We could have faced off in the finals, all of that stuff. We had so many epic games. So yeah, that's a regret.
No, I definitely feel that one as well. That reminds me of my Live 2002 franchise with the Kings that I was playing back in 2002, final year of high school, and of course that kind of got in the way at times, and then Live 2003 came out later in the year, and I made the switch to that, and unfortunately never really went back to the 2002 franchise, which is a shame, and then lost that save because you know how it is with an 8 megabyte memory card from PS2, you're starting to run low on space, you think, oh, I'm not going to play that game again, so you end up deleting the save, or maybe it was an accident, I'm not sure now, it's been many years, but I think I probably decided that I didn't need it anymore, that I wasn't going back to it. Huge mistake, obviously, and yeah, so it's when you were so close to having that closure, that completion on a season, it definitely does sting in hindsight, and if you have lost the save, as I did, then yeah, you can't go back to it. I did recreate it and got some kind of closure simulating through and then playing the rest of the way, Derek, and that was fun to do and recreate that experience many years later. But it's never quite the same, is it?
It isn't. I mean, my brother and I had a season on NBA 2K14 using a variation of the UBR mod. Like, it's basically like a custom UBR that we created off of the base roster, and it was just adding, I added a bunch of teams that I wanted in the roster using Red MC and whatnot, and we jumped in. It was an Ultimate Classic team season. We finished the entire regular season and the first round of the playoffs back in like 2016 or like 2015, and just at the beginning of last year, so 2022, we finally finished the playoffs, and it was weird. It was weird revisiting it, 5-6 years after we had actually completed the season in the first round. Of course, we both ended up getting knocked out. So, we were being each other's opponents once again. He was using the 07-08 Celtics, and I was using the 07-08 Nuggets. And I took him down with the Detroit Pistons, the 03-04 Pistons, and he took me down with the 11-12 Thunder. So we both got eliminated anyway. But yeah, it is weird revisiting a season so many years later.
That's cool that you were able to, though. that you still had the save and were able to dust that off. I'm a little jealous of that because again I've lost some great saves over the years through carelessness or whatever, and sometimes technical issues get in the way. A hard drive crash or a memory card failure or something like that. You lose that data, but it's always a little bit worse when it's self-inflicted. A couple of else that come to mind for me, NBA Live 10. I guess I was still a little bit sour that it wasn't on PC and wanting to play Live 06 PC and still making roster mods at the time, spending time with the PC versions of NBA Live. I would have liked to play Adidas Live Run, actually to have some memories of that, because I did get into online team play a little bit when it came into to 08. We had some sessions with people from the community, and that was fun, even with the ADSL 1 connection at the time that we had. Not the best connection, but it did work, funnily enough. But yeah, would have liked to get into some Adidas Live Run just to see what that was all about. Playing some dynamic season, playing through a season and changing the results and then having a custom playoffs would have been fun as well. And to that point of online team play, NBA Live 16 with Live Pro-Am and the Summer Circuit and everything, I actually did play that a lot thanks to, well, I played it a lot before the game came out, actually, because I went to the community event that year. That was my last NBA Live community event. But to that point, Derek, I don't think I was ever going to have an experience quite like that again, because you're playing right there in the studio, you're playing it with these other people around you, kind of like a LAN party setup, and you're having that fun trash talk and banter as you're playing, and you're playing it right there in the studio in that LAN setup, so you've got no lag whatsoever. I was never going to have an experience that good again, and they gave us a code to upgrade our players immediately, of course. Didn't have to slog with the lower-rated players, so yeah, that post-release experience was never going to be as special, but I do regret not playing through that and not getting all the rewards unlocked and going through all the different venues in the summer circuit. So yeah, Live 16 is kind of a regret in that sense, because I did have fun with it before the game came out, playing that early build at the community event as I did. So yeah, Live 16 I kind of overlooked as well. But then again, I was moving back towards 2K16 and 2K Pro-Am, which I do think was the better approach to online team play, being able to design your own squad, having some stat tracking and everything. So 2K did kind of snipe them on the name. They announced it first, although, again, I was at the community event. I know that name was in place. They didn't copy 2K. That was ready to go. But 2K did get the jump on them with that announcement and probably did the better version of the mode. But that being said, Live 16 and Live 10, and I have gone back to Live 10 in recent years as well, but obviously it is Live Run. No way to play that with the servers offline, but yeah, that would have been fun.
That atmosphere you're talking about actually reminds me of the 2K League, where they have both teams all in the same room.
Very much so,
and
yeah.
They're just sitting in front of their own monitor, with their controller and their headset on, and they're trash talking back and forth, etc. It's actually funny, when I was in high school, we did that and had like a Halo LAN party.
There were big LAN parties back in the day.
Right, it was a really big thing. So we all had our little setups in the different rooms of the house and everything, and it was really cool. I think the next one for me would be not getting into modding and mods in general in the early mid 2000s for NBA Live.
Golden
so
era
many
for
great
that.
mods.
Yeah,
it was an amazing era for modding. You were around for it. I see the old threads. I see all the conversations. I see the great cyber faces, the jerseys, the courts. I see all the excitement around the projects that were being worked on, et cetera. And I kind of wish that, I was more involved back then, and that I was modding the PC versions of the game and whatnot. We were basically strictly console at that point after NBA Live 2000. We were playing, Live 2003 on PS2, Live 2004, Live 2005, etc. We weren't playing them on PC. So one of my regrets is not getting into modding and super into the NLSC back in the early mid 2000s.
Was that just mostly convenience as far as sticking with console, or was your PC not able to run some of the newer games?
It's interesting. It was kind of a transitional period in my life as far as just the structure of everything, where I was living, where my brothers were living, all of that, what our priorities were at the time and everything. And console just is what came to mind first and what made the most sense for us. When we did play these games, it was either using the in-game legends, like my brother and I would play on the same team and do legend seasons, or my brother Mark would come over and all three of us would do fantasy drafts, all of that. And, we didn't even consider playing on a monitor together after NBA Live 2000, right? Because remember, I told you about the NBA Live 2000 setup we had. We had like a 19-inch CRT monitor, and we were all sitting on stools huddled around it, and we were doing drafts on NBA Live 2000 PC. But you know what? We wanted to play on my, 40-inch screen at the time.
Huge
right?
at the time, yeah.
Right, exactly. And I know that there's monitors out there now that that are 32 inches, some even go up to 50 inches and whatnot, and a lot of them are great for gaming. But back then, what did you think about in the early mid-2000s when it came to monitors? You thought about, they were like 19 inches, right?
Yeah.
20 inches, 22 inches. Now try to picture three people, my brothers and I, all huddled in front of that throughout the early mid-2000s. So really for us at that time, console was really convenient. And it really served the purpose of what we wanted to do with these basketball video games.
Well, that's the thing. I never really bought into the PC versus console war because I've always gamed on both, and each have their advantages and disadvantages. With consoles, of course, you've got the multiple controllers, which you may not have on PC. Of course, you could get them, but didn't necessarily have them. There is that convenience, as you said, having that set up with the TV at the time. So, yeah, there are definitely positives and negatives to both. And, of course, the other advantage with console was a wider selection of games, basketball games in particular, that you didn't have on PC at the time. Of course, if you were on Xbox, as I know you were, you had you had Live, you had 2K, you had Inside Drive. On PC, you just had Live, and of course, there were some great Live games of that time, and modding made them even more special. But as far as having that choice, and again, talking about the importance of choice in the space, consoles did have the advantage there.
Right, and we didn't have to worry about compatibility, right? We didn't have to worry about
specs,
our PC
yeah,
able to handle the game, exactly, etc. So you brought up Inside Drive. That's actually another one of my regrets. That's a game that my brothers and I never played back in the day. We never played those games together. I played them at my friend Craig's house, like I talked about, because he had an Xbox, but we didn't have an Xbox.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. So, my fix with Inside Drive was with my best friend.
Right.
And Nick only got to play the Inside Drive series recently when I was playing it on the emulator. So Inside Drive 2003, he had never played that game before. And of course he was floored by it. And we have a season where we're like 40 games in now. He loves that game. He wishes he had spent time with it back in the day. But at our place, during that time, wherever we were living, it was PlayStation 2. And of course, Inside Drive wasn't on PS2. So I think back then, I did have the money, but I was using it towards their stuff. I wish that I had bought an Xbox, right? And played Inside Drive with them, because I think it would have been a staple in our house, because, it has the season where you can select any number of teams to use. So we could do our fantasy drafts, all of that stuff. It had great stat tracking, great highlights, fun gameplay. That's one of the things I wish I could change, is I wish I had exposed them to Inside Drive. The other one for me actually is NBA 2K14 Xbox One online. And I know this is going to sound weird, but my brothers were turned off by that game, the Xbox One version, because, as you know, you didn't have a way to play a season using multiple teams. You could only control one team.
Yeah.
So it took out the possibility of us doing fantasy drafts, playing seasons against each other, etc. But there was the cool 2K14 Xbox One online connectivity option where you could play a season with somebody. Now, the stat tracking was really, really short on it. It wasn't great stat tracking. It was very limited. And you weren't getting all the awards, updates, all of that stuff. But at the same time, I wasn't living with my brothers at the time. I wish we had spent more time trying to do an online season on NBA 2K14 because how great is the gameplay and graphics and presentation on NBA 2K14 for Xbox One, PS4? It's amazing. So unfortunately, they weren't able to get into that game.
No, that is unfortunate because I can attest to how much fun I've been having with, and that's just MyCAREER mode. MyGM, of course, that first year of MyGM, making it RPG based and having to unlock functionality with VC was definitely a mistake. I'm glad they corrected course very quickly in 2K15, bringing in My League as they did, and having those options between the RPG-based mode and your traditional sandbox franchise mode. Definitely the way to go, but yeah, that's a shame. And again, it shows that when games make that generational jump, I mean, we've talked about Live 06 before having, Live 06 Xbox 360, I should say, having some really good gameplay, but missing the legends, missing the retro jerseys, missing Dynasty mode. You know, having a pretty good season mode and good gameplay and great graphics and everything, and making this really impressive next-gen jump, but then losing all that content. And 2K14 for Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 did lose a lot of content, and unfortunately it came back in 2K15, but you know, there's some stuff that we had on the previous generation, the 7th generation and the PC ports, that we still don't have in 2K to this day, with creating a legend or create a team and things like that. So we have lost things over the years, and that's a shame. So I definitely understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, we spent 10 times more time on 2K14 for the PC because it had all the options, right?
And mods.
It had all the options that we wanted, and all the customization, and then it had a modding, obviously. So we spent a lot more time on that. So the last one I'll bring up, and obviously I have, other stuff I could share in relation to this topic, but the last one I'll bring up is a regret, and this is my fault. This is 100% my fault. I spent a ridiculous amount of time in NBA 2K13 PC creating my own version of the URB. So like an Ultimate Classic Teams roster. I think I added about 20 teams that I wanted in that base roster. And I put all of my favorite cyber faces in there. I did, put the scoreboard that I wanted in there, the wipe, the watermark, the ball mod, the global. Like, I went nuts getting this game ready for my brothers and I to have a memorable classic team season where we all controlled our own team. We would all, be each other's opponents, etc. So we start a season, and my brother Mark is using the 0102 Mavericks. That was his choice. He loves Dirk Nowitzki. Dirk's probably his favorite player of all time. It's Dirk and Rick Fox and Walter McCarty. Those are my brother Mark's three favorite players of all time. But so he started a season with the 0102 Mavericks. I'm using the 11-12 Thunder against him in the first game of this season. And as you know, in NBA 2K13, they added the ability to do spin dunks, right? So like you go into a spin move and you gather your dribble and you dunk it in traffic. And I was using Russell Westbrook, and I did it 8 times in a row on my brother Mark, and he quit the season, and we never played it again. And I regret doing those 8 dunks because the hundreds of hours that I put in getting this game ready, getting these mods ready, etc., for just to have just this blast, like this memorable experience, was all ruined in one half of basketball because of those 8 spin dunks that I did with Russell Westbrook. And that goes back to, first off, NBA 2K13, it's very hard to play defense. It's very hard to stop dunks. Yes, and it's very hard to block shots. But unfortunately, I don't know what I was thinking. I decided I guess I was going to cheese the game and just stick it to him. Maybe I thought it was funny at the time. Maybe I thought I was being funny. He didn't think it was funny.
Sometimes a move like that, like it's hard to go past it. Like when it feels that good and looks that good and is so satisfying, you can't help yourself.
Yeah, I'm just like, oh my God, can I do it again? And I do it again. I was like, wait a minute. Can I do it one more time? And I do it again. And yeah, I ruined that season. We haven't actually played NBA 2K13. We haven't tried a season since I pulled that. So that amazing roster, all of that stuff, it's still sitting there, but I don't think we'll be revisiting that anytime soon as a result.
And before we get to the community responses, I'll just throw this out there. I wish I had the universal adapter or the Super Nintendo back in the day so that I could have imported some of the NTSC games from the States, or maybe even Super Dunk Shot from Japan, because that works with the adapter as well. The Famicom cartridges work with that adapter as well. And as much as I love World League Basketball, which is the PAL version of NCAA basketball that you loved, how great would it have been to play with that bootleg NBA game back in the day?
It would have been amazing. See, we loved stuff like that, right? Because we used our imagination.
Yep.
So, like, even if it is Jordan versus Bard, or, if it's the Chicago Bills instead of the Chicago Bulls, we would use our imagination and make it work. And it's actually funny because Slam and Jam 96, I just posted that video to YouTube. One cool thing about that game is the only real NBA players are actually Magic and Kareem.
Exactly.
So there's video game legend possibilities in that game. There's like R. Larkin and et cetera. And I feel like if we had played that game back in the day, I did not play that when it was a new release back in the 90s. If we had played that game back in the day, we'd be talking about those video game legends today. So you and I need to connect on that game, though.
But let's get to the community responses now. And first up, we have Nate Starshow, one of the Live 01 legends, of course, says, I wish I spent more time with NBA Live 06 PS2. I still have the game, but have yet to revisit in the past 2 years. I made the playoffs in my NBA Live 2004 Cavs franchise, 12-minute quarters, 28 games, but I've yet to play the playoffs. Haven't decided the series length yet either. And yeah, obviously, NBA Live 06 PS2, the same as the PC version, apart from lack of modding, of course. I love that game, Derek. You know how much I love that game. Talked about it on the podcast before as well. I would definitely recommend that, Nate.
Well, look how much they love NBA Live 2004. Right? They were playing that a ton, playing it solo, playing it together. A bunch of videos went up on their YouTube. And NBA Live 06 is still a continuation of that gameplay. A lot of the player interactions are the same. The controls outside of Freestyle Superstars are obviously very similar to one another. In my opinion, if somebody loves NBA Live 2004, there's like almost 100% chance that they're going to really enjoy Live 05 and Live 06.
I mean, that was a really strong 3-year period for Live, wasn't it? 2004, 2005, and 06. I've called it that second golden age for Live. I mean, you could even throw 2003 in there as well with the introduction of freestyle control. But yeah, those 3 or 4 years for Live, it was still cooking. People can say that 2K overtook it and left it in the dust, but I think those NBA Lives hold their own against the contemporary 2Ks.
The younger generation today has to realize that NBA Live was still in everybody's mind in everybody's living rooms back then.
Oh, yeah.
And we were seeing the commercials constantly for those games. And, when basketball video games got brought up, when, my friends and I and everything, NBA Live was very much part of the conversation. It was a really good time for NBA Live.
I mean, you look back at the promotional materials for NBA Live 07 with Adam Morrison, the great mustachio, of course. He's talking about growing up playing NBA Live. He's our age, so that doesn't surprise me. But these days, players not going to be talking about that. When they talk about, when they do promotional work for 2K, they're going to be talking about growing up playing 2K, obviously, because you're not going to be talking about playing NBA Live on an NBA 2K promotional material, even if you did play NBA Live in the past generation. But for a long time, players were talking about playing NBA Live, but then as 2K took over and the younger generation were growing up with that game being either the only game or certainly the game of choice, that was the game they're talking about growing up playing.
Are you trying to say that there isn't some young people out there that are going to boast about growing up with NBA Live 14?
It's possible, but I have my doubts.
Right.
And of course, the playoffs in NBA Live 2004 that Nate mentions reminds me of playing Live 96 with a 1998 season roster update and getting through to the playoffs and playing the whole season, 82 games, 12-minute quarters. Even took that game on holiday with me once and played it on someone's computer with my save on floppy disk and copying it to their PC and then copying it back to floppy disk and taking it home and really playing a game on the road, if you will. Sometimes getting through the season, and that's also your situation as well, playing the full season and not revisiting the playoffs until sometime later. Unfortunately, I lost that save between computers crashing and that disc getting lost. Real shame, because I did play that whole season and really wanted to have my last dance, if you will. But no, we can definitely relate to that.
There's something special about finishing a game, playing 48 minutes, like real life, and finishing a season playing 82 games.
Yeah.
Like, that's always my brother's and my goal, is to try to play the full length of a real season and do the 12-minute quarters, because we want it to be as realistic, from a time perspective as possible. So I know that not everybody has that time, and I definitely don't hold it against anybody if they do a 28-game season or 54-game season, etc. But there is definitely something special about doing 12-minute quarters and 82-game seasons.
Definitely. Next up, we have Phil Lime 2002, says 2K15. I wasn't able to play it that much, and 2K16 in terms of my career, because I played every single game and reached Year 5. Basically, like Andrew does with 2K14. It could have gone forever. And that is awesome. Again, I can definitely relate to playing multiple years of my career, having it actually feel like a proper career. That's what I really enjoyed about my 2K14, my career. And clearly he had the same experience with 2K16. But no, I obviously relate to 2K15 as well, not being able to, not playing it as much as I would have liked. And yes, I'll go back and play it, but no, I definitely would have liked to have played it more back in the day. And split more time between it and Live 15.
Yeah, I brought up 2K15 earlier. I definitely wish I had spent more time on that game, especially when it was online and my team was an option. Because I do think that NBA 2K15 is incredibly strong gameplay-wise. They built off of what was already awesome on NBA 2K14 and even made some improvements. So while I wasn't thrilled with the graphics direction they went in, with the dark arenas and whatnot, and not the quality of the reflections not being as good, etc. From a gameplay perspective, yeah, I could have sunk a lot more hours into that game.
And look, I'm looking forward to doing it. I mean, again, this is the benefit if you're not stuck on MyCAREER, although you can play MyCAREER in that, obviously you can play the offline version of MyCAREER. It is missing some features, some of the accessories that you had to buy through the store that are no longer accessible, which is a shame. But obviously there's a lot of modes in those older games that you can play an offline version of. And again, that's a real shame that they've taken that away in the last couple of NBA 2Ks. Actually, beginning with 2K18, the introduction of the neighborhood and all those online elements has just stripped the offline mode down to very bare bones for 2K18 and 2K19. And then from 2K20 to today, you can't play MyCAREER offline at all. And it's a real shame.
I mean, they want you to play the newest game, Andrew.
Yeah.
So they want you to, spend the most time and, spend the most money on the newest title. So that's the way it is.
And it's funny because you look at the neighborhood when 2K19 came out, everybody had pretty much moved on anyway. So it's really only just that small core of retro gamers that still go back to games or continue to play them for another year or whatever. So it's not even like shutting down the servers or stripping out the MyCAREER mode
is going to make them lose tons of sales, right?
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not going to make a dent in their bottom line.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah, they could definitely cater to that and not lose a single cent, but yeah, suits are going to suit, right?
Right, exactly.
And moving over to the Discord, Pep, shout out to Pep, of course, modder in our community, great stuff for 2K14 PC, says, maybe Live 08. I didn't spend too much time in that game because I heavily modded Live 07 for the 07-08 season. Definitely a reason that people stick with games, as you know, Derek. And for the second question, he says there's a season in 2K11 that he didn't finish using the New Orleans Hornets. Remembers trading Pondexter and someone for Gortat and Dragic.
So I can definitely relate to his comment about NBA Live 08 for the PS2, slash PC. And the biggest reason why is because we had officially moved on to the 2K series for NBA 2K7. So like full time as a family, we, went over to that because they allowed you to do the, multi-team use. We were able to, in season mode, we were able to do our fantasy drafts, all of that stuff. And it was on the newest console. So it was on, PS3 and Xbox 360. So we also got the updated graphics. We were so disappointed with NBA Live 07 when it came out because of the ridiculous frame rate, the ridiculous animations, the incredibly poor gameplay, the lack of multi-team use, all of that stuff on the 360, that we were like, all right, yeah, we're definitely switching to 2K now. Because NBA Live 06, we weren't playing that on the 360 anyway. We were actually playing that on the PS2. So NBA Live 06 got a lot of play in our house. But we were ready to move on to the next generation of consoles at that point. NBA Live '08 could have been a lot of fun for us. We could have created a lot of video game legends on it because it still has that, for the PS2 PC versions, it still has that, a lot of the elements that made, the mid early 2000s NBA Lives so special. As far as like the gameplay, a lot of those bones are still there, and whatnot. So yeah, I can definitely relate to the NBA Live '08 comment.
No, I think that's a point where a lot of people made that switch to 2K because Live 07 and '08, the PS2 PC version is definitely stronger in a lot of ways. Certainly for '07, it does have that issue with lack of fatigue and substitutions that the official patch kind of resolves, but not really. But yeah, compared to the Xbox 360 version, that next-gen version that was really supposed to be pushing things forward and was such a blunder, no, I think it lost a lot of people there. And even if you could get past not being able to use multiple teams, control multiple teams in the season and dynasty mode, yeah, so many other issues with that game.
Yeah, the gameplay was absolutely terrible for us. So we weren't going to move on. We weren't going to play that game anyway.
And of course, I definitely relate to not finishing a season that I did spend a lot of time with. And to that point, Jord says, I had a save in, I think, 2K9 that I went like 60 games deep, but the save got corrupted. That is tough, losing a game to corruption. I mean, it's bad enough when you save over it or delete it or whatever, or lose it because of a technical problem with your PC, but when it's the game itself corrupts a file, that's pretty rough too. And I can definitely relate to losing a season one way or another about 60 games in, and yeah, that's rough.
That made me think of the 54-game season from NBA 2K9 that I brought up earlier on the podcast, where my brother and I just decided to move on to 2K10. The difference being is that was a decision, right? He didn't have a decision. He had the corrupted save issue. So yeah, that's incredibly unfortunate.
I will say though, and maybe this is just me comforting myself with tales of lost save files, but I think if you did spend hours with it, there's a certain amount of closure and fun that you get simply from playing that much and getting to a point where you've had a lot of fun with the game and feel like you've got your money's worth out of a game. I mean, you always want that closure if you've got that far, especially getting through to the end of the season, getting through the playoffs one way or the other. But if you've spent that much time with a game, you've had a pretty good time with it, so you've probably got some pretty good memories, so you do have that at least.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is, though, is we talked about it before, closure. Right. When you sink tons of hours into a mode, a season, or anything really, actually in life, it doesn't need to be basketball gaming related. You want some closure, whether it be like a final result, a decision one way or another. And when you have the memory card corruptions or, a season doesn't get finished or a mode doesn't get finished, you don't get that closure.
Well, that's right, yeah. And closure is what you make it. Completion is what you make it on the virtual hardwood. As we've said before, I've written articles about that as well, exploring that theme. But yeah, when there's a technical issue, when you lose it because of a hard drive crash or a memory card corruption, or again, there's a bug in the game that soft locks a save file or corrupts it, as in this case, yeah, that's rough because again, it wasn't your fault.
Right, exactly. I still plan on going back and finishing a season with my brother that we had on 2K14 because we had a second season that we got into the playoffs from years ago. We do want to go back and finish that one. There's a 2K16 season with all three of us where we're in the playoffs and we haven't finished that yet. So we're going to go back and try to finish that at some point. So there's definitely still, I think it's very important to note that if you can hold on to your save, do it by any means possible because you never know when you're going to want to revisit these games.
Absolutely. Make backups as well if you possibly can. Things like my 2K14 MyCAREER, I can sync with the PlayStation Plus cloud, so I do have backups there, and I can back it up to a USB as well, but it just automatically saves as autosave on that one file, so it's not like the older games where you could save copies of it. But whenever you can save copies or back up something to a cloud or a USB or whatever, make those backups because, again, as you said, you never know when you want to revisit it. You never know when something's going to go wrong as well, sometimes, as paranoid as that may sound. But having those backups is just such peace of mind. And, we can go back and we can revisit these games and create new memories, create new seasons, of course. And we are all about that. We are constantly advocating for it. And it's really cool, Derek, to see other people in the community going back more often and playing these games now. And people realizing they don't need to be on that live service content if they're not enjoying it. They don't have to be on that grind and that recurrent revenue-driven mode if they don't enjoy it. You can go back and play these old games because so many of them hold up, and they've got experiences that hold up and can still hook you in all these years later. So absolutely go for it.
Yeah, I mean, look at that experience we just had on NBA's Inside Drive 2003.
Exactly.
We had that experience in 2023, and that's something that we're never going to forget. No, I mean, you see it in the top 10. You see it on the NLSC Discord, people talking about the older games that they're playing, whether it be mobile, PC, or on console. And you see it in the NLSC threads as well. A lot of the older games are still being modded and whatnot. 2K14, 2K13 are still modded. There's an NBA 2K11 project out there. There's still people, modding the early 2000s NBA Lives and whatnot. And you and I were just recently modding NBA Live 96. So yeah, let's keep these old games alive and, keep basketball gaming fresh.
Definitely. We're going to keep doing that. We're going to keep talking about it here on the podcast, sharing those great highlight reels on our YouTube channel, of course. As we always say, Derek, hit us up on our socials and in the comments on YouTube. Tell us what you'd like to see us play, because we do have big collections and we're keen to connect on Parsec and play a bunch of them.
Yeah, it's fun revisiting games we haven't revisited in a while, or games we've never played before. So whatever suggestions you have, throw them at us.
Except Live 07 for Xbox 360, we may decline that one.
Yeah, I might do it. It's kind of fun to laugh at.
True.
So.
But thank you to everybody who responded to the mailbag prompt. Always love having that interaction with our listeners each and every week. With that being said, that has brought us to the end of this week's show. As always, we thank you for tuning in and invite you to join us again next week, either on the NLSC, nv-live.com, our YouTube channel, or your podcast app of choice. In the meantime, please connect with us on social media. That's where you can get in touch with us, and of course, stay up to date with all of our content. So Derek, go ahead and plug the handles.
Yeah, you can reach me on Twitter at D43G and at D4384. I'm also on YouTube, D43, and on the NLSC, D43.
I am Andrew in the forum, and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. The NLSC is on Twitter and Facebook at the NLSC. Our Instagram is NLSC Basketball. We're on YouTube at youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center, and of course keep it locked to the NLSC itself, nb-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. So, thank you once again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.